Hey everybody, this is JDGaming, back today to discuss yet another Duelist dilemma I'm far too familiar with. This time around, we'll be discussing the sunk cost fallacy. In economics, the sunk cost refers to the time and energy that was previously spent on something. Whether it's a school project that's going down the wrong path, a crummy investment that keeps heading downward, or a relationship you've poured your heart and soul into without any clear sight of a future, it takes the stance that because these resources have already been spent in the past, they in fact no longer contribute to future costs or potential future investment. This is where the concept of the sunk cost fallacy comes into play. A fallacy is an idea that we often take to be true at first glance, but if we closely evaluate it, it turns out to be a misguided one full of holes and built on a faulty foundation. The fallacy part is that we often go into autopilot of continuing down the rut we've created for ourselves in whatever walk of life, when in reality, this perspective incorrectly places way too much importance on the time we've already spent and ignores how much more of our lives we're bound to waste if we just keep going for the heck of it. It certainly goes against human nature to abandon something that has been so consuming and focal in our lives for days, months, or even years. However, it becomes more obvious to objective outside observers that there's nothing good that will come from continuing to waste time and energy on something that, for whatever reason, just isn't working. In the context of Yu-Gi-Oh!, there's this paradox where if you were to try building a new deck after a single glance over a new archetype, you're probably not going to be very successful with it without spending any significant time to learn and hone the strategy. Therefore, it would be silly for you to give up on a deck after just that first try. But what if you go back to the drawing board again and again, twice, thrice, for weeks, for months? If you've ever found yourself stubbornly refusing to abandon what's now become your special pet deck, you've probably gone to the opposite extreme of our last example and succumbed to the sunk cost fallacy. There's nothing inherently wrong with being determined. It's such a rewarding feeling to finally crack the code and figure out how to make that deck work better than your wildest dreams. But sometimes it's better to know when to take a break. This was my experience with Rika. Following my video on The Gap, I did a lot of testing with the pretty petal princesses. I tried a deck with most of the archetype being represented, then focused on trying to bring out the best aspects I could find within the theme. None of it was working to the level I hoped. A couple of months went by and I still couldn't get them to bloom. I did find a few really cool interactions that I still hope to fully flesh out in the future. But for the time being, I went with an entirely different approach and teched only a couple of cards into my Plant Link deck. Honestly, it was an interesting experience. It was discouraging not being able to find the secret sauce to get the deck to that next level. It was draining trying idea after idea and not having it work. Yet, I was very deliberate and mindful of the time it took, and I did realize I was spending far more time than I should be with any one incomplete concept. One thing that I wish I would have tried is a simple checklist to evaluate how the process is going. How much time have I spent so far? Different folks will have their own opinions of what's reasonable, but the important thing is to check against that and see if you've gone too far. Is the deck still getting better, and is the level of improvement still promising, or is it getting to a plateau? You should at least be able to gauge whether the changes you're trying are being impactful for better or worse. If you're running out of good ideas that lead to consistent improvement, though, you might have hit a bit of a wall. Am I trying new approaches, or am I running out of ideas? Sometimes you might find you circle back on yourself and revisit old ideas you've already tried. If this leads to improvement this time, then that's totally fine. But if you still aren't getting anywhere, take note of that. And finally, is there another deck I am more excited to play right now? And am I still having fun? These are the two biggest ones for me. I think that for most people, anything we do, we hope will eventually bring us happiness, even if it takes a while. But if we're just being stubborn and giving up on decks or anything else in life that we enjoy more just to keep going, we've got to take a serious look and see if it's worth it. While not an exhaustive list by any means, I think running through a quick series of questions like this checklist can help one recognize how much has already gone into a deck and if it's really worth continuing to spend more time on it. Sometimes all you need is just a short break to get new and exciting ideas you can't wait to try. And like any creative endeavor, you'll put out your best work when you aren't already drained. If you've ever felt like a deck was hopeless, you might have realized a fundamental flaw that can't be overcome. After all, no amount of willpower is going to bring your 40-card 4-star beatdown deck to the top. At this point, it's best to cut your losses and move on. You're not getting that time back no matter what you do from this point forward. However, if you feel there's still promise and have reached a dead end, don't be afraid to try something entirely different for a bit before returning with a refreshed perspective. One of the best things in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is revisiting an older strategy that's improved through new support, a change in the metagame, or just your own creative passion being reignited. Remember that you're not doing anything wrong by quitting. Rather, you're choosing to free yourself up so that you can make the most of the bright, undecided future ahead of you. And there you have it, a discussion about the duelist dilemma, the sunk cost fallacy. If this idea seems familiar to you, be sure to like the video and share your story down below. And if you have any other suggestions on similar topics that may be helpful to discuss, I invite you to comment that as well. That's it for now, but feel free to grab one of these videos on your way out. If you really enjoyed what you saw today, remember to subscribe to JDGaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos. Thanks guys, this is JDGaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.